Hi, this video is sponsored by BetterHelp. After reading 20 terrible manga, talking to someone sounds pretty good, and if you want to unload more personal stuff besides how you're scared of lollies, BetterHelp is here to listen to any and all internal and external problems of your daily life, with 24/7 communication to connect you to any of their thousands of licensed therapists. Talking to someone has never become more convenient. Finish reading volume 13 of Berserk? Easy, just hop into a one-on-one therapy session and talk it all out. In all seriousness, it's nice to alleviate mental hurdles and stresses while talking to someone. And after speaking to friends who only really know how to sum up things with, "That sucks, man," BetterHelp is refreshing because of its licensed professionals to really discuss with you what you're feeling. And if you love to talk like me, there is no speed limit. You can chat face-to-face in video call appointments, and if the day has been difficult because, well, life, BetterHelp lets you contact your therapist via text, day or night, wherever you are, whenever you need. They will reply as soon as they are available. Have a certain expectations of therapists? No problem. BetterHelp lets you fill in a questionnaire to make sure you get a therapist that matches your needs. You want someone to challenge your beliefs, explore your past, or set homework and goals? You can do that. It's all about finding the person you're most comfortable with so you can alleviate the worries on your mind. And lucky for you guys, BetterHelp is giving 10% off your first month of therapy with code MUGEN, a service willing to listen and help you out. It's not a waste of time to improve yourself or reevaluate your problems through the lens of someone who cares about making an impact and difference in someone's life. And you didn't even have to leave the house. So why not? Go to betterhelp.com/MUGEN. Click the link in the description below and sign up to get 10% off with the link. That's betterhelp.com/MUGEN. Get the help that you want and need. And thanks to BetterHelp for sponsoring today's video. Now, manga recommendations. Every now and then, a manga reader will have to rely on the recommendations of their peers in order to find something new. But for me, I've read too many good manga. I wanted something shit. So I asked my community to recommend the shittest manga they've ever read. The worst of the worst. I want the Room of Manga. I want the Freddy Got Fingered the manga. I would read all of them and put them straight into a video. The rules were pretty simple, only taking one recommendation per person, not reading it if I have before, and it can be any genre you want, even hentai. And because of the amount of chapters that would have taken me to read all of these, I decided to just read one volume per series. That being said, I may have read a little bit ahead on some of these. Of the results I got, some were pretty shit, some were pretty good, some were pretty shit and then they got good, some were pretty good and apparently they get worse. If I didn't get to your recommendation in the comments, it's because 20 was already pretty much a lot, so take some of these with a grain of salt as they are the recommendations of others, not my own. Compile them all into a video for you all here to read the 20 worst manga recommendations. And for it to be terrible, it's different, right? It's not the same as other YouTubers, right? It makes it different. It's not the same as some other ones. Hello? First is Pupa, commented by Moomin Comet. Now, surprisingly, Pupa was actually already in my list. I don't remember putting it on there, and I don't know for what reason besides that people said it was just kind of in my notes, I basically wrote, horror monster story veiled to hide sexual tension between siblings. It's pretty I remember the characters' names because I didn't care that much, but they're siblings. Essentially, they grew up being abused by their father, and then the brother, growing up and becoming the responsible one, always wants to take care of his sister. And she always calls him Big Brother, which is just... But at some point, they become embroiled in this reactive agent, and she turns into a monster because of a butterfly. That's cool. And then she kills people, which is cool. Horror. She kills him. But no, he's actually alive. And now that he has the regenerative abilities of the monster that is now his little sister, he takes it upon himself to allow her to eat his body so that she doesn't get hungry, turn into a monster, and kill innocent people. There is this kind of government conspiracy thing because they're the ones who are observing them and making sure that they don't get killed because they want to see how she reacts to this ability and his powers and all this shit. That was kindly mildly interesting, but the one thing that made me really not too interested were the characters. I didn't give a shit. The only redeeming things about them, or the only thing that gives you the sympathy to care for them, is that they were abused as children. And that's pretty much the only reason that you want to care and make sure that they get out of this okay, right? But other than that, the only thing that happens when they're not being upset about past trauma is just doting over each other, and that's it, just each other. It's like no other characters in this world exist besides those two. And sure, you may be thinking, oh, it's just sibling strength, but at the same time, him saying how he loves the way she looks after she has eaten pieces of his body is very cute, as an allegory for just getting a blowjob. So if you're into that, go straight ahead, my guy. I think the last note I put was, interesting idea of a monster, but E.T. kind of told it better, and with less sexual tension. I'm sure there's someone out there who really understands and loves the deep themes of this, but I'm sorry, I don't like incest. Next was, please put them on Takamine-san, commented by Water. Now I have a confession to make to you all before I talk about this manga, is that this was kind of already on my list. As a degenerate, I'm always looking for the next great story to be told to the world, and Please Put Them on Takamine-san is no exception. These are one of the ones where I was reading this knowing it was going to be kind of shit. I knew it was going to be trash, but that's kind of what I wanted, you know, even before making this video. And I gotta say, after reading it, it's pretty good. It's actually pretty good. I like it. To give you the basic premise, Takamine-san is the perfect girl in high school. She is the school class president. She's perfect in all academic ways. She gets perfect scores on every single exam and test. She's the best in every athletic way, and she is the golden girl. Everyone wants to be friends with her, and she finds a way to connect with everyone. Our main character is Shirota. He is the opposite of all these things, but he has no friends, he's not very good at anything, he doesn't want to try harder, he just wants to kind of coast through life. One day, he decides to go into the gym to just, I don't know, play Fate Go or whatever the fuck, and he sees that Takamine-san walks in and starts to get undressed, and she's not wearing any undergarments. He accidentally sees her naked, and she leaves after just getting redressed. And during class, when they get their test scores, Takamine-san gets a 98 out of 100, and in the middle of class decides that's not good enough, so she rips off her panties in front of everyone. In that moment, time is rewound by a couple seconds, but because Shirota saw her naked, he now is susceptible to the ability and can remember when things were the way they were before she rewound time and undid things. It's that little time thing that Hermione has in Harry Potter, but instead of just being this amazing little charm that is symbolic of time, it's undergarments. And every time she uses these undergarments, they disappear. So she has to keep a stock in case she wants to use the ability multiple times. That's where Shirota comes in. Because now she knows that he knows of the ability, she makes sure that he is her walk-in closet to make sure, in case she uses her ability, he's always there to put on a new pair. This is fucking dumb. But what's great about this premise, it has funny and interesting moments of trying to make sure that no one finds out about this. And also, it puts them in very funny, interesting situations. Trying to put on a pair of panties during the middle of class, how is that gonna happen? Suddenly it turns into this Death Note-esque situation. Trying to eat a potato chip and write down a name? Nah. Try and pick up the rubber while trying to put on panties on girl in the middle of class. It's actually a genuinely funny, interesting thing. She doesn't use the power all the time, but it's funny how she'll use it sometimes to not only better a situation for him, but also a situation for both of them. And you start to see that there's probably going to be a relationship blooming here. And of course, you knew that was going to happen from the start, but what's great about it is that it's trash. You don't care. You just want to see if they get together. And that's what's great. Also, she's a very cold, hard woman. She's very arrogant. And then there are moments where she becomes very embarrassed. She actually shows she has feelings. And that is, I guess, my type. I don't know. I like Faye Valentine. Maybe that's why. And I'm not going to lie. I kind of want to see what happens next. So I'm going to add it to the list. Next was Rent a Girlfriend, commented by JoshK29. He said it's pretty awful, at the same time, he doesn't really hate it, and he doesn't know why. And that is the consensus that I've heard a lot about Rent a Girlfriend, considering it being one of Giguk's favorite manga of all time, probably one of the greatest stories he's ever read. I was shocked to learn that it's still releasing, and I didn't know it had this many chapters. But reading only volume 1, you get the basic gist. This kid is a loner, he gets broken up with his girl from university, and so he rents a girlfriend to make himself feel better. She's very cute, she's very personable, she tries to make everything happy. He eventually confronts her in the middle of the aquarium and shouts at her, and shockingly enough, she shows this cold, harsher side, which is actually more interesting than the happy, cute side. I have a thing for cold women, I think. Essentially, his family find out and his grandmother finds out that he's got a girlfriend, and she is over the moon about this. So he continues to rent her for the foreseeable future, also because she needs it to pay bills, university, and other stuff. They have to continue their dealings and make sure no one finds out, but along the way, you could tell they're probably gonna get together. I think I wrote in my notes, it's like Meet the Parents, but you're renting the cute anime girl, and grandma loves Wi-Fi so she can get on her next Raid Shadow Legends character. And I'm sure more hijinks and they probably fall in love. I do think that this is something that I guess a lot of people love. It plays on the trope of the cute anime girl in some ways. I'm not too interested. It was pretty generic. It was like, oh, they're looking for us, hide under the bed. We're very close. Whoa. And that was not something that really interested me too much. I gotta say, the artwork's pretty cool. It's cutesy, it's whatever. There are some very perverty things that happen in some of these, as expected. But all in all, it starts with a guy who's very insecure that he got broken up with, that he turns into a little bit of an incel, but now it seems like he's not gonna do that. And you know what? It's not a bad thing. We need more of that in the world. Next was commented by a new dude. Originally, he wanted to see if I could find the High School Musical chapter. I actually couldn't find it. I tried to look everywhere for it. So instead, he recommended Wolf Guy. I learned before recording this video, actually, moments ago, that there are 3 versions of Wolf Guy. There is the original one from the 1970s, there's this one in the 90s, and then there's a more modern one that actually has fucking sick illustrations. So of course, I read the 90s one. I actually didn't know that there were 3 versions. I just typed in Wolf Guy. This was the first thing that came up, so I failed. But that being said, it's still pretty shit. Essentially, it follows the titular guide, the wolf guide, the werewolf man, the wolf dude, Jacob. I gotta say, looking at this 1995 one, I actually really like the art style. It reminded me of like Cowboy Bebop manga version, where it has very kind of realistic characters, but they're able to be drawn in a very caricature way. And some of the characters are pretty interesting. Imagine horror films of the 80s with the occult, mysteries of murder, HBO, but really shit writing, but still a lot of boobs. But it follows this werewolf man who's like an investigative journalist as he uncovers all these mysteries and finds a way to put a stop to them, accompanied by a cast of characters who are also, I don't know if attracted to him or not. He seems very admirable, people really like him, but there's no reason to like him besides just having a cool hairstyle and being the wolf guy, probably a massive willy. All in all, in the first volume, the mystery of this occult actually got kind of interesting in the later half, but at the start you're just like, who are these characters? Who are they talking about? Not a lot of the story was represented well. I don't know if it was because of whether or not the guy who originally wrote it just said fuck it, but all in all, the characters that we were building up, we didn't really care too much. I will say every character has a hidden identity to replicate the theme of the story of everyone being someone else hidden deep inside society. You have the girl in the suit who looks very formal, but she's banging like crazy. Wolf guy obviously is a werewolf, and his companion who is androgynous, which is pretty cool. But other than that, hey, I like HBO. Will I keep reading this? Probably not. Speaking of wolves and dogs and other canine, let's go to the next manga. My Life as Unagi-san's Dog from Cyberkiller. I've seen different series like this before. Essentially, the main character gets turned into a dog, and as a dog, he gets adopted by his high school crush, who is the most beautiful girl in school. And she is weirdly obsessed with this dog. Everything's presented from his POV, so he sees everything as giant, including them. Essentially, it's just watching this girl become unbelievably obsessed with this dog. She is only happy and very personable around the dog. Other humans, she becomes very jealous and oddly very lewd when it comes to just the dog trying to find a way to turn back into a human. She's like, hey, let me join in. Let me put your fucking tail in my mouth.
Hey, yo, what the fuck?
It's very odd. It's very odd. I do think if you just got rid of the dog and just made the guy an omniscient being that just was able to watch everyone from above without interacting, you would just have a kind of interesting porno of people getting their shit done to someone who isn't there. I can't really say much. If you're into this, cool. I'll say I skipped ahead to see if he actually does turn back into a human because I was curious if that related to anything at all, and apparently yes, and it involves a lot of breast milk. So if you like a series that slowly ramps up to the lewdness instead of just giving to you outright, you know, you get that payoff, then brother, you're gonna have a fun time. What is it about humans getting animal features that they just suddenly become cute, you know, like she's dressed in like a dog thing, it's like, oh wow, very cute, very intriguing. We wouldn't want to see the opposite, right? We want to see animals with human features, right? The next manga is Jinmen, and it was commented by Shush. Now, I had seen the cover of this manga, I think in passing. I kind of knew a little bit that there was going to be a bit cursed imagery. Stuff with animals and just Japanese horror, you just know that some shit's going to go down. Starting the manga, you follow Masako, who is a kid who loves animals. He knows a lot about them, and one of his childhood friends was an elephant called Hanayo. Now growing up and moving back to the town where he met Hanayo, he goes back to the zoo and he finds that things are a bit different than what they used to be. The next day when he brings his childhood sweetheart Taker to the zoo and hang out and bro, they find that the zoo is completely empty and that some of the animals are acting a bit weird. When they find Hanayo, they see that Hanayo has the face of a human being and that the rest of the animals have become mutated. Animals that are no longer cannibals are now cannibalistic, and they all have the fucking Attack on Titan level faces on them. This manga is cursed imagery gold. If you're someone online who's trying to find cursed imagery for your Reddit, go to this manga. You could flip to any page and you'll find cursed imagery. Essentially, the story follows the animals breaking out of the zoo into the wider world and infecting other animals to have these faces. And slowly, you really become unnerved by how gruesome they are. Think of a zombie apocalypse, but instead of zombies, it's just all these animals, and every animal has its own attributes which can be used to fucking kill. You ever seen that jacked kangaroo from My Country? You don't want to fight, and you see that one human punch him and run away because you know if you stick around, you're fucked. Well, imagine if he had the killing instincts to actually follow through and not be stun locked, and he actually followed through with the killing. That is Jinmen at its core. It kind of has this really interesting subtext down below of how animals are treated by humans, and when they gain a little bit of sentience, what would they have to say? I don't know if it gets worse later on, but for volume 1, I actually thought it was fucking terrifying, but also really cool. I liked the main character and his conflict of wanting to care about animals, but at the same time what they're doing isn't right, but what humans do, can we really say we're that better than them? There are moments where humans are doing shit that is much more psychotic than animals do. They lose their common sense in the face of tragedy, and when cornered, they'll do selfish things to escape. And that's what's kind of interesting, is seeing how humans, when it boils down to it, to survive in an animal kingdom, can they adapt like animals do, or are they forced to become worse things? So I don't know how much worse maybe this gets, but in terms of being a terrible manga, I actually really liked it. It was awesome. I kind of want to keep reading it. I'm scared, but I want to keep reading it. I just hope that the characters get a bit more development. Otherwise, cursed imagery can probably become, a bit tired. That being said, I don't go to r/cursed imagery too much. Maybe some of you guys are veterans. Speaking of veterans, more horror. The next manga was Pumpkin Night, commented by S. I had seen this in a thumbnail, I think by Masked Man, saying it was the worst horror manga he ever read, so I was pretty excited to read it. And it's basically just Halloween. That's it. It's just Halloween. It's Halloween with much more gruesome deaths, more like Final Destination-like deaths almost, except it's actually being done by some kind of entity. I don't really have much to say about this one. It was just very gruesome. As I was reading it, I was just like, holy fuck, I didn't expect that to happen. And I don't really care about any of the characters to keep reading. The first volume was just unbelievable violence. People getting their fucking eyes scooped out, people put into furnaces, people getting a metal rod shoved through their mouth, out there. And you may think that there's more probably to the plot than that, and I'm sure there is, but in the first volume, if you just look at it on paper, this is Halloween, except instead of a tall dude with a Star Trek mask, it's a little girl with a pumpkin head, and a little bit of Scream elements put in there with the whole phone, social media thing. I gotta admire the artist for trying to draw really interesting and creative deaths, but dude, calm down. I know we bullied her in school, but this is just extreme, is it not? I mean, you don't really care who dies anyway. It's also just like people. When you get to your main characters, you don't even have enough time to figure out who they are or why you should care about them living, besides the fact that they were bullies in one lifetime. That's pretty much Pumpkin Night. I will say, there is that one based guy who is just like, yeah, she's gonna come out and kill us. You know what we can do first? Kill her. Oh yeah, no one's ever thought of that. Oh, that worked out so well every other time. Let's switch back to the cute stuff. Next was Beauty and the Feast, commented by Zelda is Based. Beauty and the Feast follows this girl called Shuko and a boy called Yamato. Essentially, it's just a kind of cute little slice of life. She's a 28-year-old woman who is a widow, and she cooks food for Yamato because he lives in this apartment complex because of his scholarship to play baseball. And because he's hungry all the time and always tired and working hard, she cooks a lot of food for him, and she enjoys the company and seeing someone enjoy her cooking. I don't think anything sexual is really integrated, at least in the first volume that I remember. That being said, it does seem like a very normal slice of life of two people who are very lonely. Cooking food for him, it's kind of nice just seeing how she is willing to put in all this effort just to make someone's day a little bit better. And that's something that's kind of cute. I don't think it's that interesting to keep reading. The jealous girlfriend is actually pretty funny, and the art is pretty comedic, especially when she's trying to, you know, buy a rice cooker, which I think she said was like $600. How much are rice cookers actually? Oh, she got ripped off. There's one for $300 on Amazon. Also, how is she able to afford a $600 rice cooker? That's fucking ridiculous, bro. 60,000 yen? Get the fuck out of here, man. Go to Best Buy. But other than that, it's just a kind of cutesy little slice of life thing. If you like seeing people bond over food and also just trying to find ways to not be lonely, maybe it's a thing for you. She's very endearing, and she's not really doing this for any ulterior motive. Has 80 chapters, which is fucking weird. I don't know how you need 80 chapters to tell this story, but yeah, go ham, fam. Speaking of couples, next manga. Next was A Couple of Cuckoos, commented by Sans. They said, it's like a poor man's domestic girlfriend. Based on that comment, I had some expectations of being it pretty shit. Turns out, it's pretty shit. I had more fun reading Gyaryu Girl. Essentially, it follows two characters who were swapped at birth, and they actually meet their real parents. And they are also engaged to be together. At one point, they first meet without knowing who each other are, and she threatens to commit suicide for some social media post, which is, I think that was the content warning. But apparently this is still going. I don't know. I was just reading this and I'm like, I don't care. And also, this is the second manga in a row of this list where the girl blackmails the boy. Why is this becoming a common theme? And it's basically similar to the other one with like Rent a Girlfriend. I kind of see them similar in my eyes. It's like, oh yeah, we need to maybe pretend we're dating, or yeah, we have to learn to get along, but it's whatever. There is a one engaging part where the main character is actually trying to do the best at school because the girl he actually likes is the smartest girl at school, and the fact that they both want to date each other, but they both want to be better than each other. I actually kind of like that, and I wanted more of that. But then I thought, isn't that just Kaguya-sama, Love is War? I can see why it sells very well, but there are too many possible avenues for conflict that none of them are being worked on. You have the thing of swapping at birth at the very start, and you think that's going to be the main thing that goes throughout the entire series. There is maybe one conflict that comes from that. There is him trying to date the girl at school. That's a conflict. There is them having to live together for 2 weeks. That's a conflict. He doesn't even address the fact that his real parents, who are meant to be technically his in-laws, he doesn't have a conversation with them. He doesn't get to know them, at least in the first volume. There are so many avenues for conflict that none of them are being used well at all. It's just like brushed under the rug. Like, who gives a fuck? They just try and put these two characters in situations where they have to work together, but it's never really in a way where it feels like they're getting close. It just doesn't matter. I just don't care. It's just similar to the Dog or Feast manga where the real goal is just true love at the end, and except with less food and less lewdness and just characters I don't give a shit about. I just don't care. They could have literally just added any kind of other thing to this and it would have been interesting. I can see maybe how love triangles may be a turn on for a lot of people, but for this, bro, they probably introduce a love triangle and forget to use it in the next fucking volume. So let's move on. The next manga was Infection, commented by Valtiel, and he noted it was one of his guilty pleasures. When I first looked at this manga, one of the first tags I saw was lolly, so I hated it already. The main character Haruki gets locked in with a girl called Kirara in the storage shed at high school because they tried to get him to confess to his actual crush Satsuki, but they mistook her for someone else. So he's stuck in this storage shed with her for like 2 to 3 days, and when they get out they find that their entire city has been overrun by these infected zombies, which I will say have a much better interesting design than most other zombie manga, or at least even zombie media in general. They're not just rotting corpses. They have these fucking worms coming out of their mouth and their eyes. It's pretty distinct. And it follows him and a group of his high school friends who are just trying to survive. In the first couple chapters, I thought that the girl that I really liked, which was Kisaragi, was dead. Turns out she's not dead. Thank God. In terms of where this manga is very good, is the promise of Haruki getting laid. They never talk about that being the goal. The goal is mostly for him to take care of his little sister, the lolly, who I will say in the first chapter she was introduced, fucking sick. She absolutely destroyed the zombies, protecting all these little kids in her elementary school, while this fucking jerk of a teacher is like, oh, I can't do it. Oh shit, I'm a bad teacher. Oh, why did I have to get subbed today? Oh no, I just want to go home and watch hentai. But in general, it's them trying to survive. But Haruki is so good at just trying to make sure that people stay alive. It's like his goal. It's his want for everyone he cares about to be okay. That obviously gets the attention of some of the girls. So I am now invested as a reader to make sure that he gets at least with one of them. And I hope to God Kisaragi doesn't die. I'll be so mad. And a lot of the characters actually have personalities. Girl he was locked with at the start, Kirara, she's actually kind of funny. And she's annoying at first, but you start to see she's just trying to put on a brave face. She said that she was a third year. Turns out she's a first year. She's just trying to remain confident. At one point, the ecchi kind of comes out in the fact that she gets her skirt ripped off at the very start. And so instead of trying to find something to cover it up, she refuses to put on anything unless it matches her outfit. So a lot of the manga is her walking around without pants and people pointing at her and saying like, what is wrong with you, you pervert? Put on some fucking pants. After reading the first volume, I feel very ashamed. I'm reading more. I actually like this. There are 30 volumes of this manga. 30 volumes! JoJo is gonna have to take a hold on this because this is my guilty pleasure. I don't know how to accurately describe why I find this interesting. I think it's the premise and the promise of Haruki, whether it be Satsuki, whether it be Kirara, or Kisaragi, but I just hope that at least he gets with one of them. Definitely not his sister though, fuck that. And I think this man had to be a hentai artist before drawing all this. I do think they kind of take the infection thing a bit too lightly, because there are times where I'm reading this like, they still have cell signal and they're meant to be calling their parents to see if they're alive. Some of the parents are not worried at all. Like why are some of the parents not worried at all? Where are all the parents? All these kids have to fend for themselves, which is, you know, a bit more interesting, add some stakes. Instead of a post-apocalyptic like Walking Dead thing where humanity and society is destroyed, it's just this city, and this city now has to find a way to survive until a vaccine is created. So there is still this level of control and this intrigue of trying to find a way to stop the infection so things can go back to normal, instead of just, oh well, let's just live with it. It's a different kind of story of trying to get back to the way things were. To sum up, it becomes ecchi in the weirdest ways, but still has some cool shit because it's a shonen. It is now my guilty pleasure. Next was Tokyo Revengers, commented by Dorito Squeen. I had heard about Tokyo Revengers through the anime starting and the manga finishing. Don't really know anything about it. I just know that there's a lot of Nazi symbols. After reading the first volume, still don't understand why there's a lot of Nazi symbols. Maybe I missed something. First volume, pretty good. I know that later people really hate the ending or really don't like how it went in terms of its direction. I'm not really too sure. I've gotten nothing spoiled, and I imagine a lot of people who are in the manga reading community hate bad endings because it feels like they really wasted their time. And I can see that. For me, I'm a bit 50-50. If the ending is kind of shit, I'm still glad that I read a pretty cool story. The main character being Takemichi Hanagaki, who, as an adult, finds the ability to leap back in time to when he was a young delinquent. And in this time, he has the opportunity to stop the death of his high school sweetheart, who dies as an adult due to the gang that he was a part of. And it's him trying to figure out how to stop that future from happening by being with the leader, Manjiro Sano. I found the first volume pretty unique, pretty interesting. I like this small kind of story of these delinquents trying to make their own kind of world, and that him having this ability to time leap adds an interesting bit layer. I didn't like the idea of time leaping too much, but I do like the idea of trying to stop something from happening and trying to find a way in which how one character went from being very kind, very normal, to becoming terrible. Looking at Manjiro, which everyone seems to love, it reminded me of Dutch from Red Dead Redemption. Interesting comparison I'm making, but bear with me. In Red Dead Redemption 2, you see a lot of Dutch's past. You start to try and see if Dutch was already crazy from the start, or if something happened to him slowly over time that made him that way, or we're just now realizing that he was crazy all along. That's kind of what I get the vibe from when I look at Manjiro. Something happens to this man to cause him to go down this route of becoming so terrible to society that it ends in the death of the main character's girlfriend. But I gotta say, I'll probably keep reading because I do want to see how it kind of gets worse in its writing quality. I know a lot of people are probably gonna say you're wasting your time, but hey, for me, manga is never really wasting my time. Hey look, I read 20 of these shitty manga. You think I'm doing anything else worth my time? Come on, look at me. That being said, viewer, from here on out, this is where the list starts to get really... oh my god. So our next recommendation came from Maria Estella Riedel, who did not recommend 1, but 4, and decided to say that one of those is a pretty bad manga. Try to find it. So after attempts of trying to contact this individual to just tell me which one is the shit one that you want me to read, I have to take matters into my own hands. I'm going to just pick one at random. And I gotta say, after reading this manga, it's actually pretty interesting. I don't see what a lot of it's bad. I think it's actually pretty cool. It had, I think, around 80 chapters, and I think I'm gonna keep reading this. To give you the idea, take the aspects of anthology TV shows like The Twilight Zone or Black Mirror. These horrific stories that could happen to any one of us if technology progressed so far, or if we lived in these weird realities and didn't learn from our own actions, especially when we wanted to wish for something. Funouhan centers around this main character, Tadashi Usobuki, who always seems to appear in the same spot every time, surrounded by cats. He is definitely not human. He offers a type of service for humans who are just trying to get an easy, quick fix in their lives. Say you want someone to disappear, maybe someone who is a rival, someone who you hate, someone who is making your life miserable, all for free of charge. Usobuki will do it, and he'll do it very well. He takes the requests that humans want, their deepest desires, and he makes them reality, but he doesn't work for anyone. He doesn't really take anyone's side on anything. He just wants to show humans how pathetic they really are. He hates a lot of things about humanity. There are a lot of things he dislikes about humans, and so the people who come to him wishing for these desires to come true are always going to meet misfortune. For example, we have characters who come to Usobuki saying, I want this person to die because they've betrayed me or they've forgotten about me. In the end, you'll find an intriguing story that reveals so much about these characters, and all of them are met with misfortune, mostly because they all have the preconceptions of what they think about the other person. They may hate this other person only to find out that they were actually someone who admired them, and through guilt may take their own life, or for wanting to remain safe and not die, accidentally kill themselves. It actually deals with a lot of psychological aspects about the human mind, how we perceive pain, and that if we perceive pain, then we must be in pain. We see things as they are and fool ourselves into thinking it's true. And Usobuki uses this to his defense. There is a detective who's following him, knowing that he's the one who's responsible for some of these horrific things that happens, but he can never be acquitted because he has this thing called the impossibility defense. It's a term used to describe a defense that is so ironclad there is no possible way that this person could have done this thing because they were not there, they did not pull the trigger, they did not do this, or this. They did not do anything that caused this to happen. It was the humans who perceived him doing something, or it was the humans who saw him do something that they think happened. And it's through this that he manipulates humans to think a certain way, to believe something that actually isn't true, which ultimately causes them to die by their own means, or find themselves utterly destroyed emotionally and mentally because of their desires, what they perceive to be true, and the lack of self-awareness they maybe have of their surroundings. It's a really interesting manga series. I'm interested to see how it concludes, how this character will finish his story, or will he be able to be acquitted for all the things that he caused? And you will see some of the worst things about humans in this, in how we are very selfish, very paranoid, and a lot of bad things. Let's get to the good things in life. Anime titties. The next manga was Destiny Lovers, commented by Sphere. had this similar trouble with Wolf Guy. Only recently, before recording this video, found out there are 2 versions of Destiny Lovers. There is the first one that is very short, and there is the ongoing one that has around over 120 chapters and still publishing. The plot of also the original one and the sequel, better version, are pretty much exactly the same. A group of characters who are all virgins are put into this cell where they are monitored by a group of very attractive women in scampy clothing who want to have sex with them and take their virginity. But if they do, they will die. So it's all about them trying to make sure that they don't succumb to temptation and continue strong and keep yourself pure. There is apparently some other subtle plot thread of the fact that there is some disease or something happening out in the real world that's causing this experiment to take place for the sake of humanity. But I didn't really get that far, of course, with volume 1. But it is very, very funny to see these guys try and resist temptation and find ways to make sure that they can relieve themselves and stay pure. There is this situation where at one point they give them an injection, which is apparently for like the testing of the medical thing that they're there for. It actually is just a version of Viagra that makes them all have boners. And they have to figure out, how do we get rid of our boners? Because if they come in here and try and seduce us, we're probably gonna have sex with them. So they have to figure out how to do it without being seen on the camera. Extreme. At one point, this mysterious dude with the hood, who is like the mellow of the group, he's telling them of the strategies that we can use. One of the strategies is to communicate using his butt by writing letters, and that he is so quick at jacking off that he was able to do it in 10 seconds with both hands before any of the girls stopped him. It is wild, the shit that they have to do to make sure that they do this. And there's this camaraderie, making sure that you stay pure. Hell yeah. I don't know if this is like an underlying agenda of making sure that you save yourself for the person you love. That being said, one of the girls is the main character's crush, who is there to help him, but she can't say why. I don't know where this series goes on after this, but I will say it's a genius concept. It's so dumb and stupid. It's pretty trash. If you want some fucking edge material, yeah, this will work for you. Next manga was Land of the Lustrous, commented by Harsh. This is another manga that, like Tokyo Revengers, I heard a lot about, and I heard mixed things, maybe even more divided than Tokyo Revengers. I've heard people say Land of the Lustrous is artistically impressive, say that it has interesting characters and interesting lore and world, and other people say it's shit, it's stupid, doesn't make any sense, it wastes your time. I don't really know where I land on this. Would I say it's a trash manga and not well made? Not really. I think it has a lot of style. If you look at some of these panels, it's really cool, but I think the plot and looking at the panels don't work together. Land of the Lustrous takes place in what I think is a post-apocalyptic Earth. There is the sensei, who is essentially the leader of all these people who are made of crystalline objects, and their names come from whatever they're made of, like Diamond and our main character Foss. They protect this planet that they live on from the moon people, which are these interesting looking Buddhist-like drawing imagery. It's really unique in its premise, and that the drawings are very, very stylized. It has a style I haven't seen in a manga, at least not a really old one. But when I look at it, it's hard for me to distinguish who is who, because when I looked at the anime, it was so easy to distinguish every single character. And I've seen some action scenes that I read from volume 1, and I gotta say that the Land of the Lustrous anime seems to make it a lot more interesting and engaging than the manga. I do think that it's a much better adaptation with the ability of color and a lot of other aspects. There were things that I would look at the manga and I'd think, I don't understand where this person is, if they're in the real world or in their mind. I don't know if this is the main character or someone else. I don't also feel a goal as much as there is one, but it doesn't feel like in volume 1, there were a lot of things that were revealed to us to make me feel like I want to keep reading. I know that the whole aspect is for the main character to learn more about everyone around them and create an encyclopedia of the world, but the problem is it's not moving at a pace that feels like any of it's really worth it. I just have more questions than answers, and it's not in a good way where when I get an answer, I get more questions. In this one, I just get more questions, and then I get more questions and no answers. I don't know if I would ever read it. Maybe I'd watch the anime, but I can see why some people maybe have a problem with it. I don't think characters are not interesting, but it doesn't feel like I can distinctly separate many of them from each other, especially in a manga format. It also just feels like there are plot holes everywhere. There are plots that just come out of nowhere that don't really have any reason to be there in the first place. I don't know if I'll ever come back around to it. It's maybe worth your time if you're interested in a unique world like that, and I would maybe recommend watching the anime. That's what I found more intriguing than the manga. Even though the manga panels have really cool style, I don't think I can go with it. Speaking of style, let's talk about some edgy manga. The next manga was Goblin Slayer, recommended by Ligma Ackerman. It's a good username. It's okay. It's not really terrible, but it's also not unbelievably amazing. I think the anime probably has more of an impact in terms of the gore and the horror that you experience in motion, but for what it is just an interesting kind of look at how a fantasy trope gets flipped on its head. That's kind of it. I don't think it's a bad premise. I do like the idea of a guy who is so good at what he does that he has an extensive knowledge about goblins and how to defeat them. It's cool, but I'm not emotionally invested, even when you kind of know a little bit about the guy's backstory. I mean, he's like the Mandalorian kind of guy, but much more darker and much more colder when it comes to killing goblins. I do like the Breath of the Wild strat of getting rid of weapons and using other ones, and whatever means possible to defeat these disgusting things that ultimately aren't the greatest threat to the world, but when it comes down to the little people, they are. They kill everyday people. I do think that there are some things that are a bit overly zealous. I can tell that whoever wrote this probably read some Berserk and really liked the trolls and thought, I want to do a whole series of them, because to me that was terrifying. And I can see that appeal, but at the same time, it doesn't feel as terrifying and as engaging as those trolls in Berserk. I think for a couple different reasons. The goblins aren't as terrifying visually and not as horrific, so the things they do seem way out of nowhere. I would say that it's not a bad manga. If I were to keep reading, it's a 50-50 coin flip, honestly. I will say, I laughed out loud when she was like, "What's your name?" And he was just like, "Goblin Slayer." It feels like I'm watching a Maxor video.
We follow John Goblin Slayer on his never-ending crusade of destroying goblin children and annihilating them from the earth.
I will say there was one good line in the first volume that I really liked, which was, "Imagination is a weapon. Those who don't use it die first." I thought that was a really cool line and kind of exemplifies that character. Again, I'm not really emotionally invested. I need a bit more if I want to keep reading. It's pretty cool. It's kind of edgy. I can see why people don't like it. I wouldn't say it's terrible, but I don't see any reason for me to keep reading, really. The next manga was Shinka no Mi, commented by Annie Marco. I gotta say, I wrote in my notes, this was just boring. It was shit. It's nothing. It's so forgettable. And I had to research because I actually forgot what it's about. Oh my god. So he gets transported to this world. He's kind of overweight. He's smelly. No one really likes him. He eats these seeds. He grows into a hot, strong guy. He meets a gorilla. He fights a boss in a dungeon. The boss turns the gorilla into a girl because the gorilla fell in love with him. It's basically about people becoming a better version of themselves, I think. It's so forgettable. It's so boring. I don't care. Out of a lot of these manga that I've read for this was the one that was the hardest to read because it was just so boring. I don't care about the main character. I don't care about the female character. I don't care about the relationship. I don't care about the gear he's getting. I don't care about the abilities he's getting. I don't care about the god who turned the world into what it is. I don't care about the world that they're venturing out into because it took a whole volume for them to get out of a fucking forest. I just really don't care about this manga. There's nothing interesting to be said. And it has 15 volumes and 2 anime adaptations. Who's reading this? I really cannot find anything redeeming about this that would make me care about talking about it. It's really nothing. It's hard for me to even try and think of why I don't like it because there's a lot of things that just don't matter. He fights a monkey, he gets all these abilities from the monkey, and then he meets the gorilla who turns into the girl. I don't care. None makes sense. There's no stakes. There's nothing. At one point, the gorilla maybe is gonna die, but of course she turns into a hot girl, and then, okay, let's just move on to the next shit. The next manga is Miso Misou, commented by Stealth. For this manga, there were, I think, 3 or 2 volumes of this, and they were actually very short, so I just read all of it because it was actually kind of interesting. But I will just say, this was where my reading challenge started to go down in terms of how the manga I was reading were making me feel. This made me just really like, ooh, this is really dark. Miso Misou follows a character called Nozaki. Nozaki is a 14-year-old girl who goes to a middle school in this very small rural town in Japan. They moved in from Tokyo. And it's one of those towns in Japan that is having such a decline in population that there are only around 10 people in her grade. A lot of them bully her. They bully her for a reason you don't really know about yet. But the bullying escalates in so many different ways. They get glue poured on her seat, scratch things into her desk. There are a lot of things that these kids do to this girl that are very awful. And the teacher can't do anything because she is also scared of the kids in the same way. A lot of the kids come from bad homes, but also just normal homes. And a lot of them are more bored, and some of them are just sadistic. The bullying gets so bad to a point that they want to scare Nozaki to come back to school because she decided she doesn't want to, and the parents won't let her because of how bad the bullying gets. And so to scare her to go back to school, they decide to try and light a small little fire when she's not home. And essentially her entire family burns to death except for her sister, who is in critical condition. This sets off a chain of events of 14-year-olds doing awful things to each other. A lot of the people who are involved in the incident start trying to point blame that it wasn't them, and Nozaki becomes docile and angry, like you would. You know when you push someone too far and you realize, oh shit, they're actually gonna fucking retaliate. But it's not in a way where it's like, oh, that was an overreaction. It's in a way where it's like, oh, I can see why everyone here wants to fucking kill the other person. It is a very brutal manga. I don't know if I like it or I hate it. I don't even really think it's trash. It has an art style that evokes this terrible sense of dread of winter and the desolate town. And I grew up in a small town where there wasn't a lot to do, and there were people who just did shit because they didn't think of anything else. And sometimes it was at the detriment of others. The gore and the awful things that Nozaki does to some of these kids and that they do to each other, and even the adults do to each other, is just a cycle of hatred. There are very nice moments that shows characters who are able to come to an understanding despite how much they despise each other. But then there are just kids who grow up in nice homes who do awful things and believe that they're doing the right thing. These kids are a product of their environment, and the best ones are ones who reject the environment, like the main character Nozaki. Even though she does all these awful things, she doesn't do it out of nowhere. A lot of the kids feel like she's going to tell the adults what happened, so they target her and decide to kill her because they believe it all started when she moved here. So everything she does is a retaliation towards them. And it is not something I liked reading, but the art style showed a level of gore and violence and misery in the eyes of these people that, with that, I'd actually recommend giving it a go. So let's move on. The next manga was Dead Tube, recommended by Redgrave449. I think this manga is definitely one that advocates don't have sex or you'll die, because everyone who wanted to have sex in the first volume or had sex ended up dying. It is similar in a way what I described with Black Mirror, but on a different kind of level. You know those stories you'll hear about YouTube where someone just does something so extreme to get views that you think that's not normal? That is Dead Tube to an extreme. And they're all about the death of people. Apparently it's still ongoing, which I don't understand, but it is a shock value story where it follows the main character who is a part of the film department in his school. He gets asked by this very cute girl to film her for 2 days. And he does that. He films her nonstop for 2 days. When she's asleep, when she's walking around, she invites him everywhere to film her. Then she goes on a date with a guy. He films them making out, going on a date, and they're about to have sex, and he's filming it. To which then she takes a fucking pipe and beats the shit out of him and kills him, and then the main character gets a boner from filming it. That is essentially the premise of him filming people dying that she kind of instigates. But at the same time, there are other people who are trying to capture the deaths of them, to which they have to avoid. That was a bit of a shocking thing I didn't expect, but at the same time, I just don't really understand the mindset of this. It was the most backwards thing ever. There was a bit where this girl who wanted to be an actress was a part of the bad guys, and she was like, yeah, I don't care if the guys take advantage of me. I got paid 3 million yen. And then the guys are like, yeah, we did it because, you know, we're not getting paid, but the director of the film department was like, we got to have sex with her and then we got to film this. So fuck yeah, of course we did it. Who are these people? Who are these people? Who makes these choices of like, yeah, we'll film this person dying because we got to have sex with the girl? What the fuck? There was a bit where there were two guys who needed to be killed in order to make someone think that someone else is a killer, and the reason that they agreed to being killed was that they got to have sex with one of the girls. Who the fuck? Why? What do you mean? This isn't real. This isn't how it works. It is so shock value on a level I haven't seen before that it's just stupid. It's so ridiculous. It doesn't feel believable. It doesn't evoke real shock in me. It doesn't matter. It's like Serbian film, but it wasn't memorable or any ways interesting and less traumatic. So there you go. The next one was Magical Girl Site, recommended by Nico. I was aware of this manga because of the meme. This one here. You know you've seen it, and you know you love it. And I only read one volume. I didn't read the entire one. I skimmed through because I heard of, I didn't see any of that. I saw in the first volume the older brother punching the shit out of his little sister, which was pretty awful. And I gotta say, in terms of just the first volume, it was okay. It was an interesting premise. I will say it. Interesting premise in the first volume. I was engaged with the idea of magical girls, the subversion of shoujo and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it wasn't bad.
Stop saying dumbass things. You're not even making sense.
No, I am making sense. Just let me finish. I can say that it is very interesting if you were wanting to go down that road of seeing something very dark and a twisted version of a demographic or a trope. I didn't get to the parts that everyone said were the shit ones. There were some very dark, very kind of grim parts and some overly sexualized stuff, especially with sexual assault. But, you know, it was okay. It was okay. It wasn't as bad as everyone made it out to be, especially with the meme. I think it's just iconic because of the meme. And again, maybe I haven't gotten to the really weird shit. I don't think I will. But it was okay in its first volume. I can see how much more ridiculous it does sound later on, but it is essentially just this main girl. She gets a wand, it's a gun, it teleports that person to wherever she wants, and all the other magical girls have different wands that do different things. One of the girls has a wand that stops time. One of the girls has a barrier. There are cool abilities, and part of me was interested to maybe keep reading, but at the same time, I wasn't too invested. I did feel awful for this little magical girl, especially because just reading Miso Misou and other stuff just made me feel like, man, the world is a terrible place. And that brings us to our last manga, which... The last manga was Metamorphosis. Now, the only notes I wrote for this were, I don't feel so good. And that is true. So I knew about Metamorphosis through this girl here, heard about it, seen the front cover on YouTube. I've seen it talked about, I've seen and heard many a thing, and I was not prepared for what I was about to read. For this manga, no one commented on this one. I took it upon myself to read this because I was very curious to know, surely it can't be as bad as everyone says it is, or it can't be as shocking. I was wrong. I will say that if you're going to read Metamorphosis and some of these other manga again, do so with caution. There are some things that can be very confronting, especially Metamorphosis. Metamorphosis is not so much a very gory thing. It's not shocking in the fact that it is haunting in its imagery. It's the events and the things that transpire that are haunting. It's not a horror. It is, in any sense, a human drama. It is the Lars von Trier of manga, but without a lot of death. Metamorphosis follows a girl called Saki, who after graduating middle school goes to high school and she wants to fit in more and hang out and have friends. So she asks her mum to teach her about makeup and do herself up a bit, maybe present herself in a much more approachable way, and she makes friends. She goes to a boba shop with her friends, and then she goes and reads some magazines on fashion to learn a bit about it. She gets hit on by a guy, they go to a karaoke bar, she just met him that day, and they end up having sex. And she enjoys it so much that sex is now the greatest thing ever happened to her. This is a story of a girl who has a sexual awakening on a level that I had never seen before in any kind of story. And I'd never seen a story where someone loved the pleasure of something so much that they disregarded any other morals that they had because it was so enjoyable. On the surface, this is a doujinshi, a manga hentai to jack off to. But reality, it is a story about someone who is enjoying so much pleasure that their life just gets worse and worse and worse in such an awful way. You'll have interesting sex scenes of this girl that you may find attractive, but then they just get more and more twisted because of who she's doing it with and the context surrounding it. And what I mean by that is every time Saki ends up having sex, at first she feels as though she shouldn't be doing this. This is bad. They're taking advantage of me. I don't know what this is. Why are you giving me this drug? Why are you giving me alcohol? I just met you today. But the pleasure she has is so much greater than her common sense that all of that is disregarded, and it leads to some awful things happening. She wants to get some money for some fashion, so she does a little job of hanging out with a sugar daddy. Instead of just hanging out, they end up having sex. Guys at school find out, they have photos. They threaten to blackmail unless she gives them pleasure. She does, and she continues to do that over the next couple of days because she also likes it. At the same time, they're taking advantage of her. The girls start to hate her. And then the worst part is her father notices that she has suddenly become attractive. I'm going to show you me reading this bit here, just to show you what will happen when you read this, and also what will happen to you as you continue to read it. Enjoy. No, 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 nope, nope. Oh, no. No. Oh. Oh, fuck. Ah. Ah. No. 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 Oh my god. No. 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 I keep doing it. No. 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 Why? Would I say Metamorphosis is a bad manga or doujinshi? I don't even know how to calculate whether or not I thought this was well written. I do think it had an impact on my mind and mental health a little bit. I couldn't eat after reading this. I just felt gross. I wanted to go eat a lamington as a snack, and I just was like, I don't want to eat. I went to work hungry. I didn't get dinner. My coworkers were like, just looking at me. There are things that will happen to you in life which will cause you to have the 1,000-yard stare. Most people, it's war, disease, trauma in your life. I had the 1,000-yard stare when I went to work. Would I ever read this again? Probably not. Do I think people should read it? I don't know. I don't even know if I could say it's bad. It's something. It's something. It's like Evangelion. You could say that you understand every reference and you think the writing is incredible and it's amazing. Or you could say it's just a fucking hodgepodge of randomness and shit that doesn't make sense. I don't know either of them. I will say it's unlike anything I've read before. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. Don't think I'll read it ever again, but I won't forget it. But maybe that's the interesting about terrible manga, or manga we think isn't that good. Can we really say they're bad if we remember them more than some of the best manga that we've ever read? How much more of these manga that are awful that maybe you've read do you remember more? I know there are people who hate the ending of Attack on Titan who remember it more and talk about it more than any of their favorite manga. I know a lot of people who have watched some of the best movies ever made, but they'll always remember The Room more than they would The Airplane Doctor. Regardless how you feel, please let me know what you think in the comments. If you think I should read more terrible ones, or maybe, I don't know, give me your take on whether or not you think that Magical Girl site is a masterpiece or if it's a piece of shit. I don't know. But thank you for everyone who commented, who watched until the end. Tell me down below, what page did you love of Metamorphosis that made you think, what am I doing? But that's all from me, guys. I appreciate for watching till the end. My name's Mugen. As always, have a good one.